Scarlet is... Oh yeah, and obviously her godlike sweep, which is... I'm gonna say this is the best sweep in the game. Is this the best sweep in the game? Welcome back. Who has a better sweep than Scarlet? It knocks down with enough frame advantage to dash up and get Oki. It's safe on block now. It used to be minus 17, but now it's only minus 12. So it's safe if you space it right. It does 70 damage, which is quite a bit. Shao Kahn? Yeah, his is also very good, that's true. But is it that good? I'm sure that if you've ever played this game online and run into a Shao Kahn, you have been a victim of this. Raise your hand if you have been personally victimized by Shao Kahn doing sweep into down one on block. How many times has this happened to you? However, this sweep is -2. So you can interrupt this with your down one. Even if you have an 8-frame down one. Any 7-frame or 8-frame move will do this. It's just kind of hard because of Mortal Kombat 11's buffering system. But this is not a real frame trap. What do I mean by buffer system? In any fighting game, or almost any fighting game, you know how if you're in block stun, you can't use a move, right? Like if Shao Kahn uses, I don't know, this move, right? And I block it, I'm stuck until block stun ends. You see what I mean? I'm sure you already know how this works. Most games will give you leniency so that if you push a button at the end of your block stun, you will still get the button instantly as soon as block stun is over, right? You're buffering that move into your block stun. You see what I mean? So for most games like Soul Calibur, if you block this and you mash your button, then the first frame that you are able to attack, your standing one will come out. Because they look to see if you push a button in the last, like, let's say 10 frames of block stun. And if you pushed a button in the last 10 frames of the block stun, it just pushes that button out instantly as soon as it's able to. You see what I mean? And the goal is to make it so if you block something that's minus or punishable or something, it's easier to instantly respond properly, right? Like if you block something that's -1 and you know that it's -1, you want to be able to use your move 1 frame faster than they do. And it would be crazy to ask the player to time frame perfectly that button every single time. But in Mortal Kombat, that is exactly what they ask you to do. You see, I'm pushing the button right up until the end of the block string. And it's not coming out. You see what I mean? There's no buffer in this game. Or if there is, it's very, very small. Like, very small. If you want, for instance, this to not happen to you, in any other game, you could just mash down 1 and it would work every time. But as you can see in this game, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it'll work, but sometimes you'll trade. And sometimes you'll lose. You see what I mean? I'm mashing it exactly the same way every time. But because there's no buffer system, if I don't push the button on the exact frame that block stun is over, I don't get my move to come out properly. Of course, Shao Kahn has to deal with the same thing. If he doesn't push down 1 at the exact frame that his block stun is over, then his down 1 isn't going to come out fast either. I bet I didn't record this properly, and I can throw him, yeah. See, this is a -2 move, and he's using a 7-frame attack afterwards, right? Meaning I should only be able to interrupt with something 9 frames or faster. And throw is 10 frames, so this should not be possible. And yet, here it is, because Shao Kahn isn't timing his down one right either. This is the MK11 buffer system, and I kind of hate it. I kind of hate it because it makes this up-close frame advantage game that every fighting game has needlessly imprecise. It makes it clumsy and inconsistent, and knowing that a move is minus doesn't really matter as much because, you know, even if it's minus, you might lose anyway if you don't time your thing right. Of course, there is a way to not let that happen to you, and that is to practice the situation. But the thing is, you have to practice every single move, because every move has a different amount of block stun. So if you want to not get blown up, even though you should have frame advantage, your only option is to drill every move that you want to be able to respond to until it's muscle memory. And you have to remember all of those different muscle memories. That's obnoxious, in my opinion. Some people might say that that adds skill to the game, and it does, but it's like artificial difficulty. Like, it's making it harder just for the sake of making it harder. Kind of like some other games that I could mention, but I'm not going to mention because I don't want to make anybody upset. But this is not the only fighting game to have mechanics like that, you know? That are just complicated and hard to remember just cuz. The reason for this is probably that they didn't want you to accidentally do moves. Like in other games, for instance, in Smash Ultimate, there is the opposite problem, you know? In Smash Ultimate, the buffer system is too generous, where it's like 50 frames. If you do anything 50 frames before you're out of hit stun or block stun, then it will remember it and do it for you, right? So in that game, people complain because a lot of the times moves will come out that they didn't mean, right? Like in that game, for instance, you'll get situations where, say, me and Shao Kahn hit a button at the same time, right? So I smack him, he smacks me, or I smack him like 2 frames before his attack comes out. He tries to push a button to attack me, and I counter hit him out of the start of his attack. If this was Smash Ultimate, there is a good chance that he will smack, get smacked, stagger back, recover, and still the move that he pushed before he got hit will come out anyway. Because the game still remembers that input from before he even got hit in the first place. You know what I mean? So in that game, people have the opposite problem, that there's too much of a buffer system and it gets moves to come out that they don't want. And honestly, if I had to choose, I think Mortal Kombat's is more bearable. I think this is less annoying, because at least with this game, you can train yourself to make it less of an issue. If that's the problem, there's nothing you can do about it. If you get hit and the game remembers your input, there's like nothing you can do to make it forget that input, right? I guess perhaps you could try to override that input with another input, but then you still have to push a button that you otherwise may not have wanted to push. In summary, that's the problem with Mortal Kombat 11's buffer system. It's annoying, and I hate it, and it's my least favorite thing about Mortal Kombat 11, but it's not a game breaker for me. For a lot of people, it is. A lot of people, when they play Mortal Kombat, are like, this game feels weird and awkward, and this is why. They might not be able to explain exactly why. I couldn't explain exactly why either. I had the exact same thought when I started playing this game. I thought, this game feels wrong. Something just doesn't feel right. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was the buffer system letting me down. But for me, I'm able to look past it and enjoy the rest of the game. But for a lot of other people, that is a deal breaker for them. And I honestly can't blame them for it. I can't blame them at all.